It all started on a quiet Sunday morning. I had just moved into the neighborhood 2 weeks ago, my first real house after years of renting, and I was still soaking in the feeling of pride every time I pulled into the driveway. Everything seemed perfect. The grass was green, the neighbors waved politely, and the HOA rules, while strict, promised a well-maintained community, or so I thought. The mailbox had been one of the first things I replaced. The old one was rusted and leaning sideways like it had been run over and never properly repaired. I figured a fresh black metal mailbox with a modern design would be a small but tasteful improvement. I even double-checked the HOA guidelines just to be sure. It met the color, height, and material requirements. I mounted it securely and felt satisfied with the result. That feeling didn't last long. Exactly 5 days later, I stepped outside to find the mailbox bent backward, the post cracked, and the box itself lying on the lawn like roadkill. At first, I assumed it was a random act kids being reckless, or maybe someone backing into it by accident. But there were no tire marks, no broken taillight pieces, nothing. Just my poor mailbox, utterly wrecked. I filed a police report and ordered another one. The second mailbox was similar but sturdier. I reinforced the post, dug deeper into the ground, and even used quickset, concrete. This time, I thought, it would take a truck to bring it down. It survived exactly 3 days. On the morning of its demise, I found it not just smashed, but shattered splintered wood, twisted metal, and the post broken clean in two. That's when I realized this wasn't random. This was personal. I asked around, and that's when her name came up for the first time. Karen, technically Mrs. Darlene G. Whitmore, but everyone just called her Karen. She was the head of the HOA Bourdain, overly tan woman in her 60s with a perfectly coiffed helmet of hair, who cruised the neighborhood in a golf cart, like it was a throne on wheels. I hadn't met her formally, but I had noticed her eyeing my property the day the first mailbox was installed. She didn't wave, just stared. I brought it up to the HOA via email and got a response that reeked of polite dismissal. All exterior fixtures must remain compliant with HOA guidelines. Non-compliant mailboxes may be subject to removal. No investigation, no offer to help. Just a veiled threat and a subtle finger pointed back at me. So I did what any frustrated homeowner would do. I checked the guidelines again, line by line, and confirmed my mailbox was compliant completely. It wasn't even remotely outside the rules. And yet, there it was, destroyed again. I decided to check my security camera footage, my doorbell. Camera had a partial view of the street and captured just enough. The video was grainy, but there she was. Karen, just before dawn, stepping out of her golf cart with what looked like a wooden club, striking the mailbox like she was playing some twisted version of polo. Then she calmly got back into the cart and rode away like it was the most natural thing in the world. I couldn't believe it. It was surreal. Who does that? Over a mailbox. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about the mailbox. It was about control. Karen wasn't just a bored member. She saw herself as the queen of the neighborhood. And I, the newcomer, with the slightly too stylish mailbox, had committed the sin of not bowing to her unwritten rules. But if she thought I was going to be intimidated, she picked the wrong neighbor. I wasn't going to back down. After seeing Karen in action on the grainy security footage, I felt a strange mix of fury and disbelief. The sheer audacity roaming around in the early hours with a club, smashing mailboxes like it was some kind of twisted sport. I saved the footage, made multiple backups, and even sent a copy to the police. But I knew better than to expect immediate justice. People like Karen had mastered the art of skating just below the legal radar, hiding behind technicalities and their spotless community image. Still, I wasn't about to let her win. If she wanted me to play by the rules, fine. I'd play by the rules and make damn sure she couldn't twist them against me. Mailbox number 3 was as regulation compliant as they come. Standard USPS-approved design. Matte black. No decorative decals. Correct height, correct distance from the curb, correct post dimensions. I installed it with all the HOA's rules open on my phone, double-checking every detail like I was preparing. For a government inspection, 3 days passed, then 4. I started to think maybe she got the message. Then came day 5. I woke up, made coffee, stepped outside, and my heart sank. Mailbox number 3 was gone. Not smashed, gone. The ground, the post uprooted, like someone had been trying to yank a weed from concrete. The base was cracked clean, pieces scattered across my yard like a crime scene. No note, no warning, just silence and destruction. I checked the cameras again. This time, she was smarter, if you could call it that. Karen had parked her golf cart. Out of frame, she walked into the yard wearing all black, with her hair tied back in a bun, gloves on her hands. It was laughable, like watching a raccoon try to act like a ninja. But the footage didn't clearly show her face, just her figure. Not enough for the police to take real action. What really got to me, though, was what I found. Later that afternoon, a printed HOA violation notice taped to my front door. It read, "Mailbox does not meet community aesthetic standards. Must be removed and replaced with HOA-approved design by Friday." I stared at it for 10 minutes in disbelief. It was identical to the one I had just installed, same model as 5 others on the street. I walked around the neighborhood and took photos of every single similar mailbox. Some were rusted, dented, or even leaning. None of them, as far as I could tell, had ever been vandalized. Only mine. It was clear now this wasn't enforcement, it was harassment. Petty, targeted, personal. When I brought my concerns to the HOA board via email, again the response I received might as well have been a form letter. "Thank you for your inquiry. The board has reviewed your case and determined that your mailbox did not meet community uniformity standards. Please refer to Section 3B of the HOA Handbook for compliance details." No meeting, no phone call, just a digital shrug. But I wasn't alone. A few neighbors started reaching out quietly. People who had dealt with Karen's bullying in the past. Stories trickled in. She'd find a mother for chalk drawings on her driveway, reported someone for having non-native plants, even called animal control on a family's perfectly healthy Labrador for excessive barking. It was a pattern, and somehow everyone just tolerated it. They rolled their eyes and grumbled, but no one stood up to her. I was starting to understand why. She fought dirty, and she fought relentlessly. But I was done playing defense. I'd tried following the rules. I'd tried staying respectful. That clearly didn't work. So if Karen wanted to turn this into a game of strategy, I'd give her one. I just had to be smarter, quieter, and more patient than she expected. She had her golf cart and clipboard. I had a plan. By the time I installed mailbox number 4, I was no longer pretending this was a misunderstanding. This one wasn't just regulation compliant, it was built like a fortress. I found a steel-reinforced post online, typically marketed to rural homeowners dealing with snowplows or the occasional drunk driver. It was powder-coated black, sleek but solid. The box itself was industrial-grade aluminum, resistant to impact and corrosion, and bolted down with lag screws as thick as my thumb. It wasn't a mailbox, it was a challenge. If Karen wanted to try again, she'd have to bring a sledgehammer. And honestly, I hoped she would. I didn't just install the mailbox, I turned my front yard into a surveillance zone. To new security. Cameras were mounted discreetly, one in the porch light, the other tucked under the eave, both with wide angles and night vision. I even placed a motion sensor in the flower bed. My home was now a fortress. 2. 3 nights passed without incident. On the 4th, I saw her. It was just after 4 a.m. I was half awake, scrolling on my phone in bed, when my motion alert pinged. I opened the app and there she was. Karen, in all her nocturnal glory, sneaking across my lawn in sneakers and a black hoodie. She had something in her hand, a metal bat this time. Clearly, she'd decided brute force was her next tactic. The footage was perfect, crystal clear, her face illuminated by my motion-activated porch light, which kicked on right as she wound up and brought the bat down on the box. The bat bounced off with a clang, and she stumbled, visibly startled. She tried again twice, but the box held firm. No damage. Eventually, she looked around, dropped the bat, and slinked back to her golf cart, visibly fuming. I replayed the footage half a dozen times. There was no mistaking it now. It was her, caught red-handed in the act. I emailed everything to the local police department, filed a formal complaint, and submitted a copy of the video to the HOA with a printed letter attached, politely requesting action be taken against Mrs. Karen Whitmore for vandalism and harassment. Their response, another violation notice. Security cameras must be approved in writing by the HOA prior to installation. Your recent additions have not been reviewed by the board. Please schedule a compliance inspection within 10 business days. No mention of the footage. No mention of Karen. Just a slap on the wrist for me for protecting my own property. That was the moment something inside me shifted. I realized I wasn't dealing with just one unhinged woman. This was a whole broken system, a petty fiefdom of rules enforced selectively and twisted to suit the whims of a tyrant. Karen wasn't just breaking the rules, she was writing them. As she went so, I changed tactics. I started attending HOA meetings quietly at first, sitting in the back, taking notes, watching how Karen ran the show. The meetings were just as dysfunctional as I suspected. Karen interrupted people mid-sentence, glossed over any opposition, and always pushed through her own agenda items first. Most of the board members looked bored or intimidated. A few even seemed embarrassed. I started talking to neighbors, really talking, asking about their experiences, listening without judgment. I kept it casual, never showing my full hand. The more I heard, the more it became clear. Everyone was sick of Karen. They were just waiting for someone to do something about it. That someone, it turned out, was going to be me. The next HOA board election was in 6 weeks, and I was about to make things very, very uncomfortable for Karen. Running for the HOA board wasn't originally part of my plan. I'd moved into this neighborhood for peace, not politics. But after mailbox number 4 withstood Karen's early morning rampage, and I still got slapped with a bogus violation for having security cameras, I realized playing defense wasn't enough. Karen had turned the HOA into her personal playground, and the only way to stop her was to get inside the walls of her little kingdom. So I filed the paperwork to run. No one took it seriously at first. Karen certainly didn't. At the next HOA meeting, she made a snide comment about new residents, thinking they can change the world with a mailbox. A few people chuckled. I just smiled and let her talk. But behind the scenes, I was working. I started going door to door in the evenings, campaigning with signs or speeches, just talking. I asked people how long they'd lived here, how they felt about the community, and whether they'd ever had problems with the HOA. Most were polite at first, but once they realized I was actually listening, the stories poured out. A retired couple told me they'd been fined for leaving their trash bins visible for 30 minutes too long. A single mother said Karen once left a warning note on her door because her kids had a plastic kiddie pool in the front yard for 2 days. One man had been threatened with legal action for painting his front door a shade too bright. All of them said the same thing in one form or another. I didn't fight it. It just wasn't worth the trouble. Karen had worn them down. That was her real power, not just the rules, but the exhaustion. She made everything a battle, so eventually people stopped fighting. But I wasn't tired. I was just getting started. I printed out flyers, not flashy ones, just clean, simple sheets. With my name, a few bullet points about transparency, fairness, and accountability, and a phone number where people could reach me directly. I handed them out one by one. I kept the tone positive. No name-calling, no rants, just facts. I didn't need to smear Karen. Her actions had already done that for me. 2 weeks before the election, something shifted. People started calling, asking questions, offering to help. One neighbor, an accountant, volunteered to help me look through old HOA financial records. Another offered to host a meet and greet in their backyard. Karen's name came up more and more, but not in support. She noticed the shift to dot at the next board meeting. She launched into a speech about how the neighborhood was under attack by those who don't appreciate tradition and order. She didn't say my name, but everyone knew who she meant. She went on about how newcomers wanted to destroy the harmony of the community with radical changes. I sat in the front row and smiled the entire time. What she didn't know was that I'd already gathered more than enough support to win. People were tired of being bullied, tired of her games. They just needed someone to stand up first. Election night came and went quietly, with paper ballots and polite conversation. The results were posted on the HOA website the next morning. I had won by a landslide. Karen didn't say a word when I walked into the next meeting as a board member. She just pursed her lips and flipped through her agenda like nothing had changed. But things had changed. She just didn't know it yet because now I had a seat at the table, and I intended to flip it over. Being on the HOA board was a lot less glamorous than Karen made it look. There were no grand ceremonies or ribbon cuttings, just spreadsheets, policy documents, and long, awkward meetings in folding chairs at the community center. But to me, every line item was a weapon. Every rule was an opportunity. I wasn't here to play her game. I was here to rewrite the rules she'd used to push people around for years. Karen tried to ignore me at first, pretending I was just a placeholder, a blip. But the rest of the board had started to see the light. Without her constant interruptions and domineering tone controlling the meetings, people actually spoke up. We began reviewing old violations, digging into questionable fines, and opening the door for resident appeals. It didn't take long before a few board members quietly admitted what I'd suspected all along. Karen had been operating unchecked. For years, using vague language and fabricated community concerns to go after whoever annoyed her. So we changed that. I proposed a policy requiring photographic evidence for all citations. It passed. I pushed for a community vote on aesthetic guidelines, giving residents a say in what counted as acceptable design. It passed, too. The power was slowly being pulled out from under her, and she knew it. The final straw, though, was the audit. One of the neighbors who had helped with my campaign happened to be a forensic accountant. He offered just out of curiosity to look. Through some of the HOA's old spending records, what he found wasn't explosive, but it was enough. A pattern of Karen approving expenses without full board approval, particularly for beautification projects that all happened to be on the street where she lived. Fresh landscaping, new fencing, even decorative lighting, none of which had been evenly distributed across the neighborhood. When we brought it up during a board meeting, Karen turned red and claimed it was all approved verbally. No documentation. No signatures. No luck. That's when the board voted to suspend her privileges pending a formal review. She didn't take it well. She stormed out of the meeting in a huff, muttering something about ungrateful residents and mob rule. By the end of the week, she had submitted a resignation letter, citing health concerns and a hostile environment. No one threw a going-away party. And with that, the self-proclaimed queen of the cul-de-sac was gone. To celebrate, I decided it was time to make a final statement. I hired a local artist to design a mailbox. Not just any mailbox, the mailbox. It was a beautiful, hand-forged piece of blacksmith work, shaped like a miniature fortress. Sleek angles, weatherproof steel, a hidden compartment for packages, and a subtle engraving on the side that read, "Resilient, not compliant." I cleared it, with the new board of course, everything by the book. Installation day was almost ceremonial. A few neighbors came out to watch. Someone brought donuts. Kids rode by on their bikes and gave it a thumbs up. People took pictures. It wasn't just a mailbox, it was a symbol of pushing back, of standing up, of finally saying enough. That night, I slept better than I had in months. A week later, someone no prizes for guessing who tried to take a swing at it again, this time with what looked like a crowbar. My new camera caught the whole thing. She managed a single blow before the steel resisted her completely. She tried again, harder, and ended up twisting her wrist. The footage showed her stumbling away, clutching her arm. This time, the police took it seriously. It was poetic in a way. The woman who had ruled by intimidation reduced to vandalizing a mailbox like a teenager with a grudge. The charges stuck. Community service and a restraining order followed now. Every morning, I sip my coffee on the porch and glance at that mailbox and touched, unbothered, unbreakable, just like me.